Welcome to Conscious Dominance, a DSRX studio production with Eric and Andrew. In our weekly conversations, we explore how we approach our committed relationships as a powerful catalyst for mindful leadership and inner dominance. As men who intentionally lead our powerful feminine partners, we share insights for discovering how the craft of consciousness deepens our capacity to love, serve, and connect with our true selves.
Good to see you, my friend.
We're going to talk today about death and rebirth, or another word that I use shorthand for this is regeneration. To regenerate, generative. And it's just the concept of what is it to, that the end is not the end. That what we think of as the end, there's just often the beginning. And I think shifting a mindset that is linear, where we feel like failure means we're done. And what is it to renew ourselves? What is it to get back up after we have failed? What is it to get back up after we have broken up in a relationship? What is it to reinvent ourselves in a new identity? What is it to make a mistake with our woman where we feel shamed or feel put out and not fall apart? And what is it to, all of those are different examples to different degrees of what I'm speaking about when I speak about regenerate, to be regenerative. It is one of our pillars. It is something that I feel like if there's anything that I'm really good at, it is dying and being reborn in this life. I have had bankruptcies and divorces and injuries and demises and all kinds of crazy stuff in my life that I get up. And my mom once said, whatever can be said about you, Eric, is you have the capacity to get up again. And it's true. I think about with surfing, where you get caught inside, which means that there's a lot of waves coming and you're trying to paddle out. And what happens with surf is surf comes in sets. And when the set comes and you wipe out, you can often get caught inside, which means you're there and you could be struggling. And if you don't get out of the way, the next set will come and you're fucked. And you're just like getting beat up. That feeling of getting caught inside where the waves just come at you, this is what it feels like, where it's just life is just hitting you upside the head. I've had that, like literally getting my ass kicked. I've had it from when I was growing up. I've had just so many examples, and I think so many men have. And I think the key is not to give up, and that there is just this thing that I've been thinking about lately. It's such a simple concept, but it's so important and so vital. And that is, it's just believe that there's something on the other side of this, that it's possible. That's what it means by faith. Have the faith, the trust that our life sucks now, but there is something on the other side. It's like a little ember. The way I think of it visually is there's a fire, and then morning when you had a fire the last night, you're camping, and it looks like everything's out. And then you see this little stream of dust, you just move, there's just a little ember. And all you have to do is cherish that ember. That ember is like the part of our soul, the part of our heart that we just have to nurture. And you blow on, and then bring a little kindling. And we got to be really gentle with ourselves as we come back. And I think what so often men have is we approach the beginning stages of the rebirth like we approach when we're advanced. And we're a hard ass, and we're like, fuck yeah, go. And no, you ever build a fire, how you approach the fire when it's big is very different than when you approach the fire when it's little. When it's little, you just put a little bit in and you're really tending it. It's soft, it's gentle. That's how we have to be with ourselves as we come out of this rebirth. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I was never taught this. I just had to learn it myself for trial and error. And I was like, and because I had kids, my kids saved me. And I was the only one that was there for them at a certain point. So I really had to get my shit together. And I realized and they were little, I was like, oh my God, I can't approach my daughter who's 2 or 3 like fucking fierce. Like I have to be gentle with her. She falls down. And it was a revelatory experience for me being like, this is me. Like my son at this age, like I have to be a lot kinder and gentler to myself in these beginning stages of my rebirth. It's just like a seed. When you have a plant, like you got to be gentle with it. And this is the thesis, or what I want to put out there is this idea of rebirth. There's different parts of ourselves that are needed at different stages. And this is, we talked about before, this discernment that what we need to be selfish at different points in our life is different. And it's sometimes when we're going through a rebirth is a combination of rigor and accountability and grace. And that's why my values, two top values, grit and grace. We have to have grace. We also have the grit. When you're getting hammered by those waves, it's not a weak moment, but you can't pound through them. You got to be smart. And so have the discernment, be like, I need to take a day off, or I need to just get some help. I need a therapist, or I need a friend, or I need to just take care of myself. The idea of regeneration and what I mean by that and this death and rebirth is so important as we grow older and as we step into our masculinity and our power and our strength, that there are going to be periods of our life where we're not going to feel strong, where we're going to feel weak, we're going to feel like we got our ass kicked and we're out of it. And in those periods, there is a part of us that needs to be gentle with ourselves, while at the same time holding ourselves accountable.
Yeah.
There's both of that.
It reminds me of a song lyric. If you're going through hell, keep on going.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
don't give up. Don't give up.
Keep on going might mean just keep getting up. Just keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. I love the self-awareness to learn from seeing your daughter as a 2-year-old when she falls over. I can't handle her the same way that I handle myself, but oh wait, I actually really can't handle myself that way either.
Right.
I'm curious for you, like, how did you start giving yourself more grace then? Like when you had that realization.
I was in a relation. Thank you for asking that. I was in a relationship with a woman who wasn't providing that for me. So I had to learn how to provide it for myself. Nature was the way that I did it. Nature became my great teacher. I was living in Maine at the time. And so I was able to go on these long walks and be by the ocean and be and walk in nature. So nature was my balm, was my soothing, was where I went to find like my nurturing, and was how I slowed down. And I was doing construction and raising kids as a single dad. It was tough. It was a tough time. And I was renovating my house. It was just, the whole thing was really a tough time. And I was being sued. It was like one thing on top of another. And I was also quitting. I didn't want to, part of the issue was substances. And so I was not using that, and I was trying to navigate getting out of the X. It was just a lot of things that were there. And so I had to find a way forward that was slow and gentle with myself, because I couldn't just shift out of it. And so I found that gentleness and the slowness was these walks and was nature. And I remember I had a therapist at the time who was just there helping me to take care of myself. She's like, you have to make food for yourself and watch a TV show. And so I got into watching a show and just looking forward to it and really enjoying the show. And that was like my little time. Peaky Blinders, by the way, was my show.
Peaky Blinders. I've only heard of it.
Oh, you got to watch it. It's awesome.
I love the slowing down. The story might come at a little bit of a funny, it might sound like it doesn't apply, but I'll get there. I remember back, one thing I don't think I've probably said on this podcast is, for quite a few years, I worked in the car business. I sold cars. I was a sales manager, finance manager. Like, I did basically all the jobs in a car dealership, and I did all in basically my early 20s. And there was one guy when I was selling cars. I paid my way through college by selling cars. I was pretty good at it. Made really good money as a 19, 20-year-old, and was able to pay my way through college with very little debt because of it. But one of the sales managers we had there, we would have a sales meeting every Saturday morning. And at the sales meeting, he would always leave one empty seat at the table. And that empty chair was for our customer. He always left space for our customers in our conversations about sales, in our conversations about what we were selling. If we wouldn't say this or act this way or treat someone, if we wouldn't act in this meeting in a way that we could act in front of the customer that's sitting in this chair, then we're not going to act that way in this meeting. We're not going to be deceptive. We're not going to act with a lack of integrity. But it's that idea of creating space for what is to come that I loved about that. Because it gave us some perspective on integrity, but it also was like there's room for, we're open for something new to come in. So often in our lives when we're going through these periods of growth, what we really need is to close some doors, to leave some things behind, to turn off some things, to maybe disconnect from some people. And it's going to feel like there's nothing on the other side of it. But we have to make that space in our lives by slowing down in order for there to be space for something to come in next.
I think the main premise with this too, I think I love what you're saying, is if we're not being conscious here, we're going to die. Our life will, the falling apart that happened to me was because I didn't see and think, oh, I need to slow down. I sped up and I started doing this and this and this. And it wasn't until I had kids forced me to slow down. Kids literally forced me where I couldn't do anything but be with them. And in the act of being with my daughter and putting her to sleep every night, and my son, and being with them and reading bedtime stories and feeding them, it slowed me down. Like it did, because I couldn't go and work crazy hours. I couldn't go date a bunch of people. I had to slow. And it taught me that. And I think this notion of slowing down is something I'm also going through right now, where there's these periods of contraction so that we can expand, doing less to do more. There's a great book that I recently, Cal Newport, that I read that I really appreciate. He's Slow Productivity. And he has this notion of how we're able to navigate this time. And one of the things that he says is these 3 rules. And one of them is be obsessive about quality. Be obsessive about what you want to do, like obsess about that. And the other one is do less. Like in order to obsess about quality, we have to do less. And we think that we could do so much and maintain that structure, but no, you lose something. I've seen this in training for martial arts or for anything. You slow everything down and you learn it so that later you could speed it up. And I think when we're going through a period where things are feeling like overwhelming, if we could just learn to know, okay, we got to slow down a bit, learn this really well, and then we can speed it up. And that capacity to know when to slow down and when to move up is life. And I think and I love another thing that Brad Stolberg said too, when he said that progress is rest plus work. That rest period to me is not like I'm doing nothing. It's also me looking and thinking and feeling, where in my life do I need to slow down? Where do I need to speed up? That's literally consciousness. Consciousness is saying, okay, I can go here farther. Oh, I've got this issue here. Shouldn't lift so hard on that. I still need to rest on that. I can move forward with this, decrease this. And that, like you said, being a DJ that knows what to turn the volume up on, what to turn the volume down on. To me, this is how we can go through a death process or the regenerative quality, and we can see these things that we think of as negative. They can actually be fuel. They can help us slow down, figure out what's going on so we can speed back up. But instead of seeing that as a negative thing, that's actually literally part of the whole fucking point. That's life. That's what it is. That's life. And instead of saying that this is the end, just think it's a slowdown. It's a time for us to reinvent or make some adjustments and then pick up. It's like if the economy slows down. Okay, good. What can we, there's things that are cheap. That means just cheap stuff. Okay, let's go buy some stuff. Or it's not bad. It's just, if you know that there's cycles that come, there's always cycles.
You can get rich by just understanding those cycles, by basically investing in what nobody wants and then selling it when everyone wants it, because everything goes through cycles.
It's the same as ourselves. So that when we have these periods of slowdown, that's a great time to learn a skill. That's a great time to learn something.
Music is one of the best analogies to this too, learning an instrument. If you want to learn how to play guitar, you want to learn how to play piano, you want to learn how to play anything, what you do is you learn something very slowly, and then you speed it up a little bit, and then you speed it up a little bit, and then you speed it up a little bit, and then making mistakes because you went a little too fast for your skill level, back down. If you just try to play along with a guitar solo in a song that is recorded by and played by someone who's been playing for 25 years and play at the same speed as them, and then judge your inadequacy as a guitar player because you can't do it, you didn't give yourself a chance to actually go through the early stages. So the problem that we come into with a lot of this as men is we compare ourselves at the beginning to people who are already at the end.
And we want to skip steps. We want to jump. And we didn't learn the basics.
Yeah. And to the point of regeneration, okay, what is the part of me that doesn't feel okay with not being good at something that needs to die to make space for myself to be able to be a beginner? I am a beginner. If I wanted to learn how to play piano, guess what? I need to learn a scale slowly. I don't need to try to copy a virtuoso. It's not about what it is that I'm trying to do. It's about what is it in me that doesn't feel comfortable not already knowing. That's what needs to die.
Oh, I love that you said that. I think this is where, as I've gotten more and more in here, I'm like, oh my God, this is happening all the time. How do I overlap them? So there's parts that you're learning and you're slowing, and then there's parts that are good. And it's like tracks, like you're like in when you're editing and there's the one video and the one audio, like our life is like that. There's some parts of us that are like, oh, that's a regenerative track. That's a beginner track. And how many, do I have too many beginner tracks? And then here's the advanced track. We always got to have some advanced, otherwise we don't have confidence. So where are we over here? And seeing that and then playing that and letting that dictate what we can and can't do, not what other people want us to do, but what we can and can't do. That's what I have learned to be conscious. It really is an awareness of how much of my life am I a beginner in, how much am I at the advanced stage. Always want to have some things that I'm beginner. Keeps me humble, keeps me learning, keeps me growing. But you don't want to just be all beginner. You got to make sure you've also got these other things where you're feeling that confidence and that strength. And then be around people that support you in your beginner mode. I've got a great story there's a great book, War by Sebastian Junger. Love this book. I love war books. And there's this guy who's there. This is the Afghan war. He went and he embedded himself in the Afghan war, in the most violent part of Afghanistan. And these guys had the most gunfights during the war in Afghanistan. And this journalist, Sebastian Junger, who wrote The Perfect Storm, he was there and he's watching it. So he's narrating what's going on. And there's this one version of these guys where this one guy who's just a pro with his gun. And he's and the gun jams. And he's got his brothers with him, his compadres that are there protecting him. And his gun jams, can't work. Instead of freaking out, he literally takes his gun, sits down next to the wall, takes it completely apart, cleans it out, as though he's back home somewhere else. It's the middle of a fucking war. And he's taking the time to clean it out methodically and slowly in the middle of all that, because he trusts his brothers got him, and he knows that retraction, that slowness, that carefulness is going to protect him later and is going to care for him later. And when we can be like that with ourselves and see that our gun, that our mind, Our body, our psyche is like that gun. And that we need to take time sometimes in the middle of a gunfight. No, I can't be here right now. I got to go take care of myself. I got to go take care of this thing. And have the wherewithal to know that and surround ourselves with brothers and surround ourselves with a woman who's there for us, who's got our back when we take these moments that we can do that. It was such a powerful, like, aha moment for me where I was like, oh my God, I need my group. I need my tribe. Like, I need my people. That's what he wrote another great book called Tribe. And what the definition of that to me is they got your back when you got to take that moment because they know that you're going to come forth for them. And it's like who's staying up all night, like back to being pre-human, who's there with the fire while we're all sleeping. You know what I mean? That's the quality that we want. And it's all endeavoring to fight the war, to do the thing, to battle. We're not just checking out to check out. Like, we're actually here to be on mission, to be on point, to be on purpose. But sometimes we got to go clean our gun.
Again, the regeneration or what gets to be new in the aftermath of that slowing down, of that pulling back, is, you think about that story, the guy in some way, I'm sure he felt like he needed to be fighting. But he also knew that in order to be an effective fighter, he needed to make sure his weapon was taken care of. He needed to make sure that he was calm and that he was in his routine. This is why we build structures and routines, and why that's an important part of masculinity, is to build structures and routines that we can lean on and we can lean into when things are stressful, rather than flying by the seat of our pants. But when we can slow ourselves down, and when we can be with ourselves, and that's when we can see the things, for example, that need to be let go of, than charging ahead into a mistake.
Exactly.
By slowing down, life to me is not about what battle am I fighting and winning. It's about choosing the right battles in the first place. And I can't choose the right battles if I'm just constantly going in one direction and too afraid of maybe losing a battle, or of like missing out on something, dropping a ball, to slow down for a minute and see, am I even going in the right direction? Exactly. Life is a process of constantly letting go of everything that is not right for us, that is not authentic to us. And my God, you can't see that when you are blinded by being busy.
100 exactly. And I think we've talked about this before, but something I'm just learning again and again is the maintenance. This idea that the nicer the weapon, the nicer the airplane, the nicer the car, the percentage of their time and the expense that's placed upon maintenance. And this is the same thing as us. I do think there's an import of maintenance. There is an import of rest. There is an import of, when I say rest or slowing down, I think it's also a thing that I might call maintenance. It's like we got to go through and make sure things are organized, make sure there's a mise en place, there's this way to do things that we can work clean. It's like on a job site in construction. Take the time to clean, to sweep, to keep the job site clean, to keep everything organized. These aren't like incidental side things. The bigger we go, the more organized we need to be, the cleaner we need to be.
Yeah, we need the structure to operate inside of.
Exactly. You need that structure. You need those systems in place. And a lot of times the go can only happen effectively if it's built upon a solid foundation and a solid structure with solid systems. And those systems need to be in place, but we don't even know what they are unless we slow down and check to see where they are, and then we can build upon that.
We're talking about this a lot in like big picture life direction kind of terms here, but I think it's also important to look at and to recognize the way that this is modeled to us in the way that our human body is designed. If we don't sleep every night, if we don't essentially die for 6, 7, 8 hours every night, we can't be fully alive the next day.
Oh, yeah.
And I love thinking about this. If you took a a new parent and you said, all right, your baby, you're the doctor and you're telling the parents, baby's perfectly healthy, everything's fine, looks like should live a very healthy, long, normal life. There's only one problem. For 1/3 of this baby's life, it's going to go completely unconscious. It's going to completely shut off. Its brain is going to stop working. It might have some visions, it might hear some voices and see some pictures inside of its head, but it's going to be completely unconscious to the world for 1/3 of its life. That's sleep. That's like the normal built-in part of what we have to do to function at our highest level as a human being. We're built to need this time where we stop.
100%. I think this notion of sharpening your saw, there's a Abraham Lincoln quote about that where he's like, if I had a certain amount of, I think it's like if I had 4 hours to chop a tree down, I'd spend 3 of them sharpening my saw. The stopping, the resting isn't doing nothing. It's also it's standing up on the hill and looking out over our battlefield of our life and being like, there's that. And then sometimes you got to just think, let it percolate, let it simmer, let it just be. We got to go for a walk and let things germinate. And then you come back and then you do.
This is something I'm eternally grateful to my father for. He was a woodworker, just an artist with being able to create things, to build things from nothing. He could fix anything. Like, even if he's never worked on something before, he could fix it. And it wasn't because he had this superhuman ability. It was because he could just slow down. This is what he taught me a lot. I can hear his words in my head. Slow down and really look at it. Mm-hmm. Slow down, really look at it. Mm-hmm. Think about it. Don't just rip it apart. You have to put it back together. So really look at what it is when you're taking it apart. How is it coming apart? Mm-hmm. What are you learning? Oh, this connects to that, connects to this. I learned so much about understanding life from the way that he taught me to fix things. Slow down, really look at it. And so when I face a problem, or now what I do for a living, and I'm building a website, or I'm figuring out how to create some automated marketing process, and I don't know what I'm doing. Slow down, really look at it. What's happening here? How is all this stuff working together behind the scenes? What do I need to understand? Maybe I need to go watch a YouTube video to learn how to do, or how this little thing works, so then I can make it all work for me now. Like, it's all the same. We have to slow down. We have to really just look at it. Take it all in.
I feel like, it's funny, we talked about death, regenerative, and then the theme that's percolating from this whole, we could title this as slow down.
Yeah.
That to me is probably the thing that I've learned the most too from Rachel. She's helped me with that. I grew up, my natural way is to go. And when I remember there was this story when I was a kid, I actually remember it. I think it's a great example of me where we were just learning how to ski, went to ski for the first time. And they asked us, the kids, if we'd skied before. I never skied before, except for with some people I was on their shoulders while they were skiing. And I said that I could ski because I didn't want to be with the kids, the little kids. I was like 7 at the time. I didn't want to be the 5-year-olds. And so I went to the intermediate thing. And I literally, as we're getting off the chairlift, I fall off the chairlift. And I tumble down.
He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. And immediately the person who was there was like, fuck, this guy, he can't do this at all. Literally had to call in the people that are there for emergencies. Completely everybody sees that she's like, this kid needs to go with the bunny slope. And there's my sister over there with the bunny things. But that part of me that's, I'm just ready to go. I have learned to be that's actually beautiful that I have this part of me. That's part of going back to never gives up, is always ready to go. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I have to learn is the first step is actually nothing, is watching. It's not just going. What did he say? Slow down, look. In some ways, he could say, stop. I needed to be told, stop.
Yep.
Look, there's an ember in there. Observe. Look at her body. Don't just go for what you want. Touch here. Touch here. Slow down. And it's been me being slow that has changed my sex. It's changed my money. It's changed everything in my life, is that there is a place for slow, and then you go to fast. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You don't just jump ahead. And I think it's a very immature thought, but we don't. And I learned that through carpentry. I learned that through parenting. I learned that through art. The part of the problem with technology is it's so fast, and it's so, you can skip steps, and it lets you do things without learning the craft, especially with AI.
With AI,
It's real dangerous because we don't actually have to go through this humbling experience of slowing down and paying attention. And all of a sudden we're here, but we don't have the foundation. And when you don't have the foundation, you're a lot more fragile. That's what I've learned. Foundations help you to not be fragile. Think about earthquakes. What is our foundation? We can weather things when we have that. When we skip the steps, what happens? You skip the steps and you're fragile. And I've really learned that. And I feel from you, you're a great example of that, Andrew. You really take the time. You fix your car, you fix your truck, you fix your RV yourself. It's a lot slower. It's inefficient. You have money, you have plenty of money. You can hire people to do all these things. You can hire people to do your website. You can hire people to do all kinds of, you literally, it feels like to me, one of your values is to slow down, to learn things, to grow. Would you say that? Like, it literally feel like you live by this ethos without maybe even knowing that you do. It's something I really respect about you, is that you're not harried and rushed. You're always like, I'm present and still and slower.
Thank you for that. And it's self-ownership, really, it's agency is what that value is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give away something that belongs to me.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned all those different places you learned this lesson. Probably the biggest place that I learned this lesson was, I mentioned sleep before. It was learning to go to fucking bed. It was such a hard thing for me to give up staying up late. It felt like because for the longest time I did what a lot of people do, which is I would go to bed at a reasonable time during the week because I had to get up for my corporate job. And then Friday and Saturday night would come and it'd be like 2 a.m. Let's rage, let's party, sleep until 10 and feel like crap. And God, I remember there was one time in my 20s when I didn't drink on a Saturday night and I woke up and you can actually feel like this on a Sunday? Like, it was a revelation to me.
Right.
It still took me another 10 years to get to a point where I would go to bed at 10 o'clock on a Friday night because there was so much, I felt like my youth was dying.
Mm-hmm.
But then by actually going to bed and giving up on the party culture and even pining after it, even when I wasn't living it, and still just staying up late because I didn't want to give up staying up late on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
I really learned that lesson for myself that, when I take care of myself, I feel better. When I go to sleep, I feel better, and that's worth it. I'm not actually, back to this concept of sacrifice, I didn't actually sacrifice anything from our last episode. I didn't actually sacrifice staying up late. I traded staying up late for feeling good. I didn't actually give anything up at all. So that's where I really learned this lesson. And then, presence is such an important thing for us as men. And we can't be present if we're rushed. We can't be present if we're busy. Like, the fucking cult of busy is something I opted out of a long time ago. And that's what you're picking up on there with this slowness. I refuse to overcommit myself. It's not so much that I value moving slowly. It's that I will not commit to something that I can't do with full presence.
Yeah. You don't overcommit. You don't double book. You're not multitasking. You
Nope.
do one thing and you do it really fucking well.
Yep. And then when I'm done, I do the next thing.
Yeah.
And I was talking with some guys here at this campground that Dawn and I are staying at right now the other night, and they're like, we have a band they're people who live here at this campground for half the year as snowbirds. Like, we have a band. Like, you play guitar, you sing, you're in the band.
And you're like, no, I'm not.
I'm like, it sounds like it could be fun to go jam with you or something, but the guy's, what time are you done with your calls tomorrow? And I was like, I'm done at 3. He's like, all right, our first practice is at 3:05. And I'm like, man, you've had 8 Bud Lights since I got here, so let's just leave that one alone. Well, I saw him then that day, and he's like, you want to do that jam? I'm like, you know what? Dawn and I were having a day. She really needed my presence. She needed my attention. And I couldn't say yes to that and yes to her. So what's the higher priority? She is the higher priority.
Right.
And so, like, the part of me that wants to be like, yes, I like, that sounds fun. Let's jam, let's play, let's sing, let's make some music. I can't just walk around committing myself to everything because it sounds fun and then expect to be able to live the kind of life that I want to live and adhere to my values. Something's got to go.
Yeah. No, I love what you're saying. I think it's so pernicious with technology and with knowledge work. In some ways, it's helpful to have carpentry and your dad was doing buildings, working on fixing things in a car, because it's obvious that you have to look and slow down and it's right in front of you. But with technology, it's so easy to get caught up in all the different things and fast. And I love what you said, like you approach the knowledge work or the virtual work as though someone who's a craftsperson approaches a craft in the physical world. Like you're methodical about it, and you're one thing, and then it's this thing, and then it's this thing, and you see it that way. And it's really unique. It's not something that a lot of people do. And it's helpful for me when I was reading, I was trying to understand. I was like, oh, I got caught up in this, and I was doing way too many things. And I'm like, I'm really trying to scale this down. And David Allen, who wrote the GTD method, Getting Things Done, his wonderful, like, beginning introduction of that is this critique of the knowledge work and how we can get caught up in this sort of and really bringing this down to more of a methodology and a systems thinking. I also really appreciate Ben Meir. He's been helpful for me. And one of the things that he espouses, it's not him original, but he calls that the 333. And I've been doing that, and it's really simple and really great. He's 3 hours of some sort of deep work, one thing every day, 3 maintenance activities, and then 3 tasks. And like letting that 333 guide my day, where every day I'm going to do 3 hours of some deep work, I'm going to do 3 tasks, and I'm going to do 3 maintenance things. And it feels like a workout. Like I feel like when I go to a workout, I don't just go do whatever I feel like. I have a very specific thing I'm going to do. I do my workout, and then I leave. When I have my own business and I have my own thing, it's so easy to get caught up in just the never-ending cycle and expand this idea and this thing. And what is it to say, this is what I do, and then that's all I have time for today. And then I have these other things that I have to go, and I need to go for a walk. I need to go and tend and be with my woman. I need to tend to help her and support her on her projects and some of these other things that are like her day. And I'm a service these other places. But what is it to have my thing? Another person that I felt like, Andy Frisella, who does this thing called 75 Hard. He's another person that I've appreciated. He's like a little bit of David Goggins meets Jordan Peterson kind of thing, where he's just like in your face a bit, where he does these 5 things every single day for 75 days. And that kind of ethos, there's something to be said for that. And he's also got his 5 tasks that he does every day before he does anything for anyone else. And there's other people that say,
but it's 5. It's
5.
50. It's not
50.
27. Exactly. And it's not, I started with 5, but then this person wanted this and that person wanted that. And now it's 7. Diluted the energy and attention I have to go to those 5.
Exactly. And I think we need to come up with that in our time that's just off limits. And this is the thing. And learning how to do that. I'm realizing that if I don't do that habitually every day, I am literally, that's when it becomes sacrifice or martyr. That's when I'm off. That's when it feels wrong. I feel off. But when I can own my day and own my time and own at least a portion of my day that feels like it's mine and dictate that, everything off of that it's just a game changer. And I think that's part of how we can keep this regenerative quality. How can we die elegantly, but not take over our life? I think this is how we're talking about it. This is what it means to be anti-fragile. This is what it means to be more sustainable, is you literally are doing things at a pace that's manageable and actually do it really fucking well.
And we can't talk about that topic without acknowledging the necessity of saying no.
Oh my God.
Like, you have to be able to say no, and to say no fearlessly and frequently. Because we had this friend back in Minnesota, and she went through this period of her life getting divorced, like losing her job, changing jobs a couple times in a period of a year, and she was lost and trying to find herself, and she decided she was going to have a year of saying yes. She was going to say yes, and she was excited about this, and we watched her basically just continue to say yes to things when she didn't have the energy, she didn't have the patience, she didn't have the time, she was spread thin, she was worn out, she was tired. And eventually the lesson that we learned from watching her go through this was every time that you say yes, you're also saying no to something else. And a lot of times what you're saying no to is yourself.
Opportunity cost.
Yeah. You're saying no to yourself. You're saying no to your peace. You're saying no to your focus. You're saying no to your agency, your control over your schedule. And you're filling your day and your time with stuff that actually doesn't matter or contribute to any sense of purpose or value. So you really have to be good at saying yes. And something I've continued to try to teach Dawn is this concept that no is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You can just say no. You can value and protect your time. Mm-hmm. And value and protect your energy, value and protect yourself. So we have to be able to say no in order to slow down enough to start to access some of what it is that we're talking about here. One
of the big things that I'm learning as I'm doing this is there's no way to lead your woman or lead anyone in this endeavor if you are not living it yourself. You must live this through and then speak about supporting others in doing such. And it's incongruent. And I think this is one of the things that I have struggled the most with is overextending myself, saying yes to too many things, and then not caring for myself and caring for my foundations and for the parts of me that are like the basics. And then it's essentially that old adage, which is so important, is under promise and over deliver, not over promise and under deliver. And I think by definition, when you do too many things, you're over promising and under delivering. And the only way that you can under promise and over deliver is by doing less. It's just physics. It's just being a human. And this is constantly what I'm navigating, is still doing the things that I'm committed to, still doing that, and letting these things go and saying that there are these, it's not never for these ideas. It's just not now. And seeing my life more as I might see, this is why going back to regenerative, as a regenerative farm, to seeing that this is not the season. There's another season for that idea. And this is where Cal Newport speaks eloquently about as well.
You mentioned getting things done. And one of the things in David Allen's Getting Things Done system is to have a someday, maybe later
Tickler
list.
Yes.
Yep. It's the list where all those things go that you actually don't have time for right now. You're not getting to them, or if you've had them on your list for a couple of weeks and you haven't gotten to them, they actually aren't that high of a priority. So put it on the someday list and then just keep checking back to that and see if anything like comes forth off of it that feels important now sometime down the road. But yeah, just because you're saying no right now doesn't mean you're saying no forever. But you don't have to, like, we can't multitask. We cannot multitask. There's this one of these things that gets bannered about there that women can multitask and men can't. No one can multitask, because you can only do one thing at a time. And if you're doing two things, you're doing one, then the other, then back, then forth, then back, then forth. You're not actually doing both of them at the same time, because your attention can only be in one place. So what if you stopped trying to multitask and you started getting really good at single tasking?
Yeah. It's like minimalism. It's just what I've been thinking about, is how letting go of my life. I'm in the process of downsizing and moving, and all with the endeavor to simplify.
That's the life that we're living now in an RV. This in part was born out of the desire to simplify so much of life. When we don't have a house to take care of, we don't have a yard to take care of, we don't have like all of the trappings of even having a home. We can clean this whole thing in 20 minutes once a week.
That's amazing.
And we're parked on a concrete pad that we don't own, that we rented for a month. I don't have any utility bills to pay. It's an inexpensive, simple way to live, so that my attention can be on the things that actually matter to me. At a certain point, having a home and a home base and all of everything that goes into taking care of it didn't matter to me anymore. What mattered to me was people. What mattered to me was Dawn. What mattered to me is the impact that I'm making in the world through this business that I'm running. And anything that I could do to reduce the commitments and the obligations outside of that gives me more of my attention to be able to single task on what matters.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think you, along with other factors in my life, have really influenced. We're in the process of doing the same. We're not going to be in an RV, but we are going to be living on the road for a while. We are going to be staying in hotels, and we're going to be staying in Airbnbs. And there is also something that I've noticed, speaking about the feminine, home for her is a to-do list. What I've found, women, they just feel everything that still hasn't been done in their house. The place where Rachel relaxes the most is a hotel. Yeah. It's almost like she can't relax. I feel like home is for men, because we get shut down. We don't worry about the fact the laundry's not done. The kitchen can be a mess, and we can still chill and sit back. We just can do that. But women, from my experience, at least Rachel's like this, and if things are off, it's hard for her to relax.
Yep.
And how can we contract? How can we contract in certain areas of our life consciously, so as to expand in other areas of our life? And I think that's when I talk about regenerative. It's not saying that this death that we talk about. The death often happens because we're resisting the need to contract in certain areas of our life. We're resisting the fact that not every single part of our life can we just grow, expand without paying a cost. And the cost is that there are certain parts of our life that we have to have contraction, or we cannot do. Yep. And in order to do well at everything, we must do less. We must simplify. We must bring a clarity and a simplicity to our life, so that we can bring mastery to it, so we can become a master of it, so we can dominate it, so we can own it, so we can have authority over it, so we can be a person who steps into confidence of it. Every single thing that we're affiliated with is our responsibility. So if we're by nature affiliated with 50 things, it's impossible to do 50 things with excellence and with mastery. And anyway, I think I'm preaching to the choir here.
No, I've appreciated this conversation, and I think even though we meandered all over the topic and on it and off of it and talked about it from every possible direction, I think we've made the point very well about letting go,
yes,
saying no, slowing down, and creating the space for something new and better to come along in your life. And that's really what it means to regenerate, is like, even when you stop, it's not dead.
Exactly.
What comes out of the slowness is the most valuable thing, because everything else is gone.
Yeah, there's birth and life on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's more conscious and more of what we want. Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for today. And it was awesome conversation. Appreciate you.
Great as always. Appreciate
Yeah.
you, brother.